Hi there and welcome to episode 75 of the ADHD Adults podcast. It's soon going to become very clear that the illusion we record these on different days is shown up for what it is, because we're still in the same room and these two, have we gone past 12 seconds, 15 seconds, arseholes are still going to touch me.
Arseholes isn't a swear.
Well, according to YouTube it is. These two arseholes are still going to annoy me deliberately. So this is obviously our Thursday episode, the seemingly continuing now experiment of adding an extra 40 minutes of utter rubbish to your lives. I'm James Brown. As usual, I'm joined by the Hannibal Lecter of poorly delivered ADHD information, Dr. Alex Connor, and the absolutely normal in every way, Mrs ADHD. Alex, hi.
Was Hannibal Lecter the elephant one?
Now, I would imagine that you've studied every psychopath in the history of serial killers, and therefore you know that is not correct. And he was fictional.
I do know that, yeah.
Yeah, and Mrs.
Hannibal
ADHD
was fictional. He didn't have the elephants. No, but he did. He went over the Alps.
Elephants are fictional.
over the Alps.
He did go over the Alps with the elephants.
Himalayas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, he was real, but Hannibal Lecter was fictional.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Jesus.
Wait, wasn't he Jodie Foster?
Hi, Sam.
Hiya.
Okay. Your bit, Al. Jesus.
What? It's milliseconds. Sam, James's ADHD, actually, you're like that too. It's so strong that if you take a tiny breath of, I would say less than a third of a second, James goes, well, why has nobody said anything? I'll fill it with showing off. A reminder that we started the podcast because we wanted to talk about science and evidence for stuff that was always said about ADHD. But people ask for more personal.
I mean,
reflections.
do they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
Love the
anymore.
bonus content, not anymore, no.
They're asking for less now.
Yeah, I think there's enough. There's enough of that. But luckily, we do have time for an extra one on a Thursday now because I've made the choice not to be university academic anymore. My second choice, to be fair, but they were quite insistent. So James is still an academic, but well, he's an honorary academic. It's like when they make, a cat a doctor on the telly. It's like one of them.
It's exactly that.
It is,
Yeah.
And Sam is also here because she just thinks we're watching telly.
That's not far off the truth. Anyway, this fake pair of Adidas trainers that have 4 stripes and your mum bought them from Kidderminster to market and now you're getting beaten up of a podcast is also a tragedy in 3 parts.
That's not why you were beaten up. The two are unrelated.
I've beaten up more than.
Yeah, more.
Yeah, we'll discuss how the week between podcasts has been. It has been a week, hasn't it, I suppose, from our perspective as people with ADHD and as people involved in the ADHD community. We'll answer some questions from that community, so remember to send your questions through on the socials or the Discord, and one of these two will pick ones that make them look good, probably. And we'll talk about this week's podcast theme, which was ADHD and headaches and migraines.
Didn't remember.
Why?
Yeah.
Fuck off. Why we chose it and how we feel about it.
Bored.
Yeah.
Right. So as always, we'll start with how was your week? As always, I'll ask you how your week was, and nobody will ask me.
Why didn't we ask you first then?
Yeah.
How was your week?
Yeah, how's your week, James?
Yeah. How was your week?
How's your week, mate?
Yeah. How was your week, James?
Jesus Christ. Fucking. I mean,
You had a good week.
It's been a busy week.
Yeah.
It's been a busy week. So obviously, the tour that I'm doing, and sometimes he manages to shoehorn his way into and tell people that it's our tour. Exactly. We did an event which was really good in Bath or Bath.
Oh yeah.
As they say down there.
Oh, that was good. It was lovely. I'd like to go back to Bath.
Yeah, and that was good. Johnny Vegas and Sue Perkins announced they had ADHD, and that led to a flurry of media work. So I managed to represent our charity on a number of different media channels.
That you did entirely on your own, you media whore.
Because I actually check emails.
I do all the emails.
Okay.
Oh, so you're checking some emails and
He
just
checks
choosing
the
one.
three.
Right.
The
Oh,
three
media
would
work.
say-
I'll answer that
Yeah.
one and I'll leave the rest to Sam.
Mm.
Good one.
As I was saying to Trisha Goddard.
That is literally true. But if I see that one that says we're filming something or recording something, I will immediately answer
Brilliant.
it before he does, saying yes, of course, I'm completely free.
Brilliant.
Before he does would be 3 weeks, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course it would. The journalistic time frame is not like
Yeah.
that. So it's been a busy week. It's been a good week actually. I'm getting back to normal after Robert from Kidderminster's passing and think, yeah, things are good.
And Sam's nan to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
That's what that was the implication.
Well, for the implication. You used to saying that, aren't you, Al? Sam, what about you? What your week?
Oh God, I had a really bad week last week. I was really low. I was stressed out and anxious. I was just getting angry at everything, even my own skin. I wanted to rip it off, and I just couldn't cope with things. My ticking was worse. My ADHD got worse. I was just really overwhelmed with everything, and it was just awful. And I said to James at one point, I can't live like this anymore. I can't imagine ever being happy or not stressed ever again. And I don't want to live the rest of my life being happy and stressed all the time. And then I came on my period and felt a lot better. But I think it's easy to forget though, because we're like flies. We live in a different time zone.
She always
But
says
things that are temporary.
Live in a different time.
Things
she always says that. Flies live in a what?
they do.
Like,
we're like
literally,
flies.
they live
Like
an hour ahead
Malta
of
or
us.
something.
No, their time zone's different to ours. So they think that they're moving really slowly, but to us, they're moving really fast. And we're like that.
This term time zone, I don't think it means what you think it means.
Good one. Anyway, we forget that we live in a different time zone,
Yeah,
like
to
flies,
flies,
don't
yeah.
we? So we think that temporary things, they seem to last forever. And we think that they're going to be like that forever and we're never going to change. But everything is temporary, good and bad, as you two keep telling me.
Annoyingly, that it is sort of true as well, isn't
Yeah.
it? What she's saying.
And hormones affect everything.
They do.
And we forget that. So whenever, I don't bleed as often anymore. So it's not every month. But I forget every time that I'm like this every single time.
Yeah.
And our hormones are fluctuating all the time. And those fluctuations just make everything so much worse. And this week's been a bit shit too, but it's rag week. So
obviously Sam and I talk occasionally.
sometimes.
And when she was particularly low, was it 2 nights ago? I can't remember. When she was particularly low, and I tried to remind, we're both fans of the comedian Jim Jeffries, and one of his bits is about him and his child saying, well, I guess this is me now. And I had to say that to her to remind her that all the time she'll be like, well, this is it. I'm never going to be happy. This is my life now. It's just shit. And then the next day she'll be bouncing like the fucking Duracell bunny, really happy and great. And I have to remind her that moods are often temporary and transient, and mood lability, if you like, being happy and then sad is very common in ADHD. It's one of the reasons it gets misdiagnosed as bipolar so often.
I spent 2 hours in your company last night where you said I will never be happy again, and then an hour and a half later I could hear you squealing at something James was saying, laughing your heads off. Ridiculous.
What about you, Alex?
Really weird. So obviously after the alcohol episode, I got a lot of love and kindness, and I'm.
Did you respond to any of those messages? 2.
No, none of them led to me being on 5 Live, so I didn't fucking bother. No, I did, and I was hugely grateful. And I am still not today drinking, just for today, and that's good. And
one day at a time.
It's awful. I never felt physically better. It's weird. I hate it because it's so hard thing, but also at the same time I'm sleeping better, feeling better, mood's better, everything's better.
Yeah,
and
it's horrible.
It's fucking horrible.
It's like me with my debt. I hate my life. I might as well kill myself.
It's nothing like that.
It's
because
nothing
you've
like
not-
that
you've
because I
not
don't
got-
feel better in any way.
No.
But there are, I suppose, vague similarities to the opioid story that I talked about.
Yeah.
That I really did not want to give up opioids,
No.
but actually it made my life way better because I stopped having
I
migraines.
didn't want to admit the alcohol thing, but in case someone took the alcohol that I didn't want
Yeah.
away, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I didn't want it. So I also had a weird weekend because I had loads of visitors, lovely people that, well, relatives, obviously, because I haven't got any friends.
Yeah. Thanks.
And they were all drinking because I want to live normal life. They did not say, oh, we won't at all. But I said, no, please do. And they were all drinking all the time. And I wasn't. And I was all right. I was okay with it. I had substitutes, good ones, heroin. No, that makes me sound much cooler than
Yeah.
the mum alcohol-free wine I actually had. And I liked it. I liked that I understood. I didn't get tired. I was up till 11, which for me is unbelievable. So that was, but fucking dreadful. So that was my week. Good. And I'm here with you two in person.
Know, yeah,
I'm
it's
absolutely
lovely.
lovely. I don't think it makes for a podcast for anyone, but we're
We're
happy.
having a lovely time.
Which leads me to question 2 that we're always asking this one, which I'm going to come to you, Sam, first, because I don't care what James has to say. Which is, and try and listen to the question. What stupid thing have you been doing instead of what you were supposed to be doing?
Well, Alex, when I was at New Street Station on our way to Bath, I came out. I was supposed to be coming out of the women's toilet, but instead I followed a man into the men's toilet. So I was walking out of the women's toilet, and then there was a man, and I just presumed he was going out, so I just followed him.
Just remember, there's a microphone.
Oh, yes.
If you're going to walk away and reenact it, the microphone's here.
Because
sorry.
it's an audio media.
Yeah, so I just followed him into the men's toilet, and everybody at the urinals just stared at me, and then I walked out.
I mean, did they? Because you look like a German man.
This is the start of a new game, which is anecdote or alibi. Definitely. Wow.
And I should have been cleaning and tidying the house to prepare for guests, including you, to arrive this week.
Hello.
But instead, just to give myself a little bump of dopamine to get myself going, I was just painting. I was just painting random bits of my office wall without preparing anything at all.
Oh yeah, I've seen them on the radiator.
Yeah,
It all over.
filling in holes above there.
On that note, last night when we were in bed, Sam said, first of all, she said, like 5 minutes before we're going to sleep, I might paint the ceiling now. And I
feel really energized. I want to paint the ceiling.
And I had to convince her not to. But you also said, your painting's getting better. My cutting in was amazing. I don't think you need to use tape. Tape around woodwork makes everything worse. And then he said, but obviously I have spilt paint everywhere and splashed it everywhere.
Yeah, but that's nothing to do with my cutting in. My cutting in was fucking great, honestly.
I have no idea. And just to be clear, I don't want to know.
When you're doing straight edges, when you're doing straight edge, like against
around the edges,
around the ceiling and around the
some people
board.
use tape. My cutting end is busting, as they say, around these parts.
You're splashing on the radio. It's pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So, I'm putting up pictures. Forgot that my friend was coming over as well. But she proved handy. Because as I was filling in holes and stuff, she was going, remember you're supposed to be cleaning and tidying. Skeletor, yeah. She was really, thanks, Skeletor. So she kind of kept me on track. Not fully. I didn't get it all done, but I got a lot done. And I was supposed to be waiting for my friend to arrive from Barcelona and thought, I've got no heating in the car, so I better go and buy her a jumper. So I was at the airport already and then thought, I'll go and find a nearby shop to get a jumper from.
Because airports famously don't have shops.
I didn't think of that. Anyway, I drove away from the airport, found the nearest town centre, was walking around there, and then she was messaging me saying, where are you? I'm at the airport. So I was like, I'll just come back now. I was trying to find you a jumper. I've been unsuccessful. And then realised I was in the electric car and I'd used all the miles up and going somewhere else. So then on the way back, I had to keep taking my foot off the pedal to get stuff back into the car.
Did you say the bread pedal? Because Alex just showed you that. Amazing.
Professionalism. Let's go behind the scenes. Sometimes, because it's an audio medium, I'll write an editorial comment for James that we'll respond to. But Sam wrote it while she was talking, and I wrote the word bread on a piece of paper. So she just read out the word bread.
You are Ron Burgundy.
Go fuck yourself, sir. James, what about you? What stupid thing have you been doing?
So obviously lots of media stuff, Al. I think so. There was BBC Radio Coventry and Warwickshire. Interestingly, the second time I've been on that show to talk about ADHD with a host who thinks she may have ADHD, who didn't remember that I'd been on to talk about
which
ADHD,
is classic.
which pretty much shows that she's got ADHD. Talking to the lovely Laura McGee on Radio 5 Live, Al. That's a national radio station.
I hate you
isn't it? Having a good chance. And then the calamitous, I suppose. It's lovely to talk to Trisha Goddard.
Yeah.
Talk TV, not maybe the best outlet, but and it froze at the end. And
it cut you off.
They had me on late, and therefore I had about 5 minutes to talk. It was their podcast section. Tell us about your podcast. And one of the greatest moments of my life is Trisha Goddard reading out Join Alex, the psychoeducation monkey, which was just fucking perfect.
But
You
I
don't
didn't
get-
get to talk about the podcast.
No, it
'cause
didn't
was
talk about the
cut off.
podcast, exactly, but she got to read out your name.
Oh God.
And it also included Sam, that didn't mention Mrs ADHD. The only other thing I want to talk about is this morning, obviously Alex is staying with us. I can't have bread in the house because I'm a binge eater and I will eat all the bread. So Alex said, oh, can I have some toast? No, we haven't got any bread. Right, okay. So I said, oh, okay, it's like 6:30. I'll drive you to Sainsbury's or whatever. We drove.
What it was Sainsbury's?
Yeah, we drove to Sainsbury's and we got there at 2 minutes to 7.
Yeah.
And Alex went, oh, it's closed. I went, yeah, it opens at
Opportunity.
7. So rather than waiting 2 minutes,
We didn't discuss it, did we?
no, we didn't. We didn't discuss it. Rather than waiting 2 minutes and then going in and getting a loaf of bread, we got back in the car, drove to the nearest garage, which was the Sainsbury's garage. They didn't have any bread. Then drove a circuitous route to the next garage where they didn't have any bread.
No,
And then where I had to say, get a fucking sandwich or something.
which I did.
For
And then,
breakfast.
so in like 18, 20 minutes of driving, well, we could have just walked into Sainsbury's.
Two men couldn't get a load of
No,
bread.
exactly.
To be fair to us, 2 minutes may
To
not be a really.
fair.
Yeah, to be-
Sorry.
it's a thing from Letterkenny.
Letterkenny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
she just ruined your flow. But that's your job. Your job is to ruin the flow.
It is. Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah.
But
So
someone's
someone's got to
gotta
do
do
it. Yeah. Is that me? Was that my bit?
It was your bit, yeah.
Two grown men can't buy a loaf of bread. That's like the tagline for ADHD or a really
It
bad
sounds like
porno.
a porn,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Alex, what about you?
Well, certainly not getting angry about you doing all the media interviews, despite me not checking the media in time. Not getting angry, not being jealous, not burning with envy at all.
Not that though.
All I would have to do would be to engage and do the admin, which is simple, but for me, weirdly in this block. And then I'd, also be a big vampire show off. But no, I'm not. Without alcohol, I've got so much time.
Oh God,
and I
that's
don't know
awful.
what to- yeah, but it's not because
Oh, paint.
I'm
I'm
not
well into
filled
painting.
with self-loathing.
Oh.
So yeah, so I really like the
Imagine.
time.
He's got more time to hunt people in the woods.
Give him a longer head start. I don't know why I'm joining in. I'm not a psychopath. So loads and loads of things. Very, very odd.
So that's doing the stuff that you're meant to be doing, as opposed to ADHD stuff not doing.
No, because I've been like learning piano and painting and all
Oh
sorts of
yeah,
things. But,
not answering any of the
Just-
charity emails or doing any
I
charity.
answer
admin.
2 a day. I'll have you know. I said that yesterday. Actually showing off, realizing that Sam and James answer about 3,000. I answer 2 messages.
Literally the entire time you two were
Oh.
out last night, I was just answering messages.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks for that, both. Something script. We're taking a break in part 2. Questions and thoughts from the ADHD adults community.
I wrote that.
Amazing. Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor.
Welcome back to episode 75 of the ADHD Adults. This is one of our extra special Thursday ones, possibly the 7th. or 12th.
Extra special.
Regular special Thursday ones.
Special.
It's one of the Thursday ones. Where we're talking about the week in ADHD and reflecting on migraines and headaches, which Sam and I don't
Head
get.
dicks. Head dicks.
Oh,
Head dicks.
headaches.
Headaches.
Head.
It's a brand of
dicks.
cough medicine.
Headaches.
Sorry. I just did a Sam.
I know.
As always, in part 2 of the ADHD Adults of a Thursday, we're taking questions from the adult ADHD community, mostly ripped unceremoniously from the pages of the ADHD Adults Discord forum by Mrs ADHD and me a bit. So if you do want to ask us a question, get on there. It's good. I like it. Feel free to substitute these. It says that in the script. I don't actually have to read it out. The first question we've got. Are you ready there? Hi there. Thanks so much for all your hard work. Presumably that one's for me. Your- I'm very much the chair of the charity. Your podcasts are great and they've guided me through a whole emotional rollercoaster of self-discovery. Who knew?
Me.
Yeah. I was wondering if you touched on diet or gut health to help with symptoms of ADHD. I don't often explain fully to people for fear of sounding crazy, but I stopped eating gluten over the past few years because I discovered it has a negative effect on my mood and causes me to feel depressed and stressed. I still indulge myself every now and then, And the next day I felt so low and angry with the world. I was worried it was all in my head, but I've read a few things linking gluten sensitivity to ADHD. My son, who shows ADHD symptoms, but is yet undiagnosed, has gluten sensitivity and has crippling stomach cramps if he eats it. This is something you've covered or be interested in covering. Love to know more. Wish more was known widely about it. The other thing, readings about gut health has an impact on ADHD symptoms, and probiotics might help. I think I forgot to mention it, but would love to know if you think there's anything in it. Thanks for helping me feel sane, Stacey. Well, this is, I hope we're not going to upset people with this answer, James.
Well, to be fair, nobody complained about the homeopathy. Or was that last Thursday? It's not going out. Nobody complained about the homeopathy.
It's because it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, but people don't. Some people think it is real. Actually, that might be the Thursday episode, so we may not have.
They are objectively wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So, celiac disease is relatively rare, and is where you have an autoimmune disease where you start to eat your own, stomach when you eat celiac because it thinks it's its enemy. Gluten sensitivity is more controversial. The pain people feel when they eat these things is absolutely real and biological, just to be clear. But attributing it to gluten is too simplistic. I'm being really careful what I said because there is debate in the literature, and there's no fact, so it might change. But it feels like many times, unless you've got celiac disease, it's very, very likely from the studies. And they know this because what they did, they took people with gluten sensitivity and they fed them actual gluten rather than bread, and they were fine. And so they had to look in the bread at what it was, and it was other stuff, big sugars. And
there was a very well designed study where they had gluten in one kind of cereal bar and fructan. So gluten's a protein, fructan is a different molecule. I think it's a protein. But they told everybody that they're gluten, and then measured the symptoms of gluten intolerance. Yeah. And the group that had no gluten, fructan, had equal symptoms of gluten intolerance to the group that had gluten in their bar.
Oh.
So there is some psychological elements, but there is definitely also biological element to it. But it probably in most cases, isn't the gluten itself, it's something else, some of the big sugars, and it has to be the sugars. They're called FODMAPs, but it's not that important. But the F's important, it's fermentable. So oligosaccharides and polyols and other mono and disaccharides that get into your stomach, and they're fermented by bacteria. So they bubble up and go, well, it makes you feel stomachy, crampy, horrible. And it's usually those rather than the gluten that causes a lot of that. There isn't a lot of evidence that there is a link between celiac and ADHD. It's just that whilst they're both rare, they're not that rare. So, in 1 in 100, 1 in 200, 1 in 300 people are going to have both. Right. And if you've got that, you're an unlucky bugger, but not that unlucky. So that's what I would say, really. So the links are quite weak, but the symptoms of celiac, brain fog, and all the things look really similar to ADHD, so they could exacerbate symptoms.
Can I talk about the probiotics bit?
Yes, please.
Oh,
so, obviously, over the last 10, maybe 15 years, the gut microbiome, the collection of bacteria, and interestingly or not, you've got more cells in your bowel than you've got human body cells in your body. I.e., there are more bacteria in number than you've got cells.
Yeah, 1 in 100 cells in your body is human.
Yeah. It's crazy. So what we know from all of these really good studies is there are often differences in what's called the microbiome. So different species of bacteria are found at different, I'm going to get this wrong and he's going to fucking rip me into it, not even frequencies, found in different amounts in different disease states. So you might find, for example, people who have obesity have a different gut microbiome to people who are lean or a healthy weight. And there is good evidence, even from mouse studies, mice are coprophiliac, they eat shit. And therefore, if you take mice who are fat and let thinner mice eat their shit, they tend to get fatter, and the reverse. So fat mice that eat the shit
fecal
of
transplants.
Yes, exactly that. And
so
that
at
was
some point in here, I'm going to be able to say title your sex tape, and it'll be really weird.
You should have saved that.
Yeah, so that's a precursor to fecal transplants. So we do know that A, the gut microbiome is different in different diseases, and B, if you can change it, it might improve. But it is almost certain that all of the preparations of probiotics that you can buy over the counter do absolutely fuck all, because they don't have enough bacteria, they don't have the range of bacteria, and there's very little evidence that they survive the journey through the stomach and into the colon.
Oh.
Actually, fecal transplants in adults don't work on it, do they?
Oh, really?
I don't think so. I'd have to check
nothing
that.
works.
Things work, yeah. Usually, it just takes a
Diet.
while to diet and medication if you're ill. That's
Right,
helpful.
fair
And
enough.
of course, drugs diluted so often that the water has to remember they're there. That also
Sorry,
works.
before you get us into trouble with the British Society of Homeopaths, we'll go on to question 2.
Okay.
This is from Sherry, I guess. It says it starts with PS, which is odd. I didn't pick this, obviously. PS, James, I know this is going back a fair way to the episode on pain, but has anyone mentioned to you all the studies on how pain begets pain? Chronic pain primes your body to respond and experience more pain more quickly with future stimuli. The pain experience is a real pain response and is real pain, but it reacts quicker in response to stimuli than someone who doesn't have chronic pain. It came up when I used to work on pain meds briefly in pharma, and also when I was pregnant and had to see an anaesthetist to see if my history of back injury would prevent an epidural in labour. She looked at my history with back pain and history of endometriosis pain and surgery, and took my hand and said, "Oh, my dear, you're going to have a very painful labour," and explained again the pain begetting pain thing. Anyway, she was right, but had also written in my notes, "Give her an epidural as soon as she asks, don't wait," which I appreciated. Alex, do you want to go first?
It's a good one, that a tricky one, because there's some of it's right, absolutely, and some of it's anecdotal and questionable, not wrong, not the same thing.
Right.
What is right is that your pain is all in your mind. It's all in your mind. Because that's where the mind processes pain, not because it's made up. So that phrase is really stigma-inducing and really unfair, because yes, all pain, you cut yourself on the knee, it's in your mind. So pain is psychological, and therefore there are psychological ways to reduce the impact of pain, but they don't always work. And that's the problem, isn't it? This is why it's often used, rather than a let's help you get through it with medication and psychology, it's often used as a stick to hit people who feel pain with.
Yeah, and there are anticipatory elements to this as well. If you've got
Yep.
chronic pain and you expect something to be painful, then your response can be more profound. And remember, as we've talked about in the episode, that people with ADHD process pain differently generally than people without ADHD, and that can be an increased or a decreased pain threshold. But certainly the evidence on this, it's not massive and robust. There aren't huge trials showing that people with chronic pain do have this blank keeps doing that, but yeah, it certainly is possible.
I like when you get distracted and
Yeah,
you go out of character.
Out of character.
Sam, do you want to talk about that?
Do you think that when you think about pain, you feel more or less pain?
Well, actually, or someone that has had a lot of pain with endometriosis, do you find that other pains around that time particularly can be heightened?
No.
Okay.
This is anecdotal, but
Yeah.
I have a really weird relationship with pain in that I quite like it.
Yeah.
And
That's what a lot of people
yeah.
do.
So I often don't have an anaesthetic for filling.
Yeah.
I'm like, bring it on, let's test it.
Yeah.
And I think but I've got really low pain tolerance for particularly things light and stuff like that, but really big for hard stuff. It's dead weird. And I never realised it was ADHD till we looked.
Yeah, no, I've got different. So endometriosis, obviously, a lot of pain. Having a tattoo and stuff like that doesn't bother me. If I stub my toe, the world is ending.
Yeah.
It's the worst pain
Yeah.
in and it. I feel like it takes.
What does it?
It lasts forever, which it obviously doesn't. But yeah, some pain's better than others. You've probably answered this one. So this is from Herrenby. Does anyone have a problem with sugar? This is something I've struggled with. I believe it's at its base structure, sugar is very similar to alcohol, though I may be remembering wrong. And that's exactly what you've just said. I know I don't cope with loads of sugary sweets well, but I don't think that's related to my ADHD.
We're going to have to science the shit out of this for a second. Let's talk about that word sugar. Because the way we talked, Sam and I talked yesterday about the fact that James and I say sugar and we mean carbohydrates, because there's loads of sugars, but most people mean the white crystals that you put in your tea, like the sucrose. And so I don't know what Herrenby's asking here. If they're talking about sucrose, which breaks down into glucose, which does look a tiny bit like alcohol, but has very, very, very different chemical effects, because sugar dissolves in water and alcohol is what's called lipophilic. They're very different with very different effects. However, sugars, plural, all of them, can ferment into alcohols, not just ethanol, in the body. So there are.
And there are sugar alcohols, as you said earlier,
There are
like
also, yeah.
sorbitol, xylitol.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have problems with sugar in terms of pain, in terms of addiction, because it does trigger a lot of the things that heroin triggers. Heroin. And
So I just want to pick up on that because, I mean, it's a very controversial area of is sugar addictive, for example. And
yeah,
in the same way as we talked in the smartphone episode about addiction, and
yeah.
it not kind of fully fitting in with the DSM-5, for example, there is, I mean, there are loads of articles, you can read them online, like proper articles about, obviously people do go or can go through some level of withdrawal. If you completely remove sugar from your diet, they can get headaches, they can get sweats, they can get kind of brain fog. So there are symptoms associated with stopping doing it, but is it addictive?
But addictive would be without a physical withdrawal, wouldn't it? That would be a dependence. So you could argue, and you're right, it isn't clinically addictive. You could argue there's an addictive element.
It's certainly not, because one of the myths you hear is that it's 100 times more addictive than cocaine or something like that. Which,
yeah, that's just on the ticker you like so much, isn't it?
I know, it's everywhere, mate. It's everywhere. Right. Is that everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank God. Okay, we'll take a break, and in part 3, we will give some extended thoughts on this week's theme this week's theme and the podcast. See you in part 3. Trumpet. Welcome back to part 3 of episode 75 of the ADHD Adults podcast. And in part 3, we expand our pretty pointless from you two personal reflections on the theme for this week, which is ADHD and headaches and migraines. So as usual, the first question is, what made you choose the idea for the theme? Alex?
Actually, it's not just because you bang on about it all the time. It's because loads of people do, and they ask about it a lot. And James has the tiniest amount of knowledge about headaches, his little headaches. So that's why, I think. What about you, Sam?
I don't know how many times I have to say this. I have literally zero editorial rights on this podcast. I just turn up.
Yeah.
And don't even read the script.
May that continue.
Yeah, and not even invited either.
No.
I guess.
Yeah.
Can we ask James?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. The reason it's important to me is less about the headache and more about the impact it has on my ADHD and my mental health. Because it's bad enough, believe me, it's bad enough having migraines. They are fucking shit in every way.
Yeah, they sound it.
But, and this is linked to my chronic back pain, which is what I took the opioids for, which gave me the migraines. There's this weird kind of cyclical thing that the last few times a massive trigger warning clacks on, even though apparently they don't work.
Clacks on.
The last few times that I've been to a big party atmosphere, let's put it that way, over to Ibiza or to a friend's house for a...
They're sex people.
No, yeah, for a bit of partridge for you there. The sex people link. The last few times I've been to a kind of all weekend sit around and chat, for example, I've ended up trigger warning clacks on with suicidal ideation because of this decision I have to make, which is because my back pain can get so bad, I've got a choice, which is be in loads of pain, and I'm not the most fun person when I'm in pain.
Oh, you're not
Or
fun.
not.
Or when I'm not in pain, obviously. So the choice is be in pain or take the dihydrocodeine, the opioid, knowing that it's probably going to give me a migraine. And neither of those things is conducive to being a person at a party.
Wait, none of those considerations was that I am addicted to.
I've got no choice. There is no other painkiller that touches my pain. So I am now able, after stopping taking it for a long time, I am now able to take,
Really?
the odd tablet now and again.
Wow.
And I have to, because nothing fucking touches the pain that I'm in my back. So the choice is be in pain, have a migraine. And what almost always happens is I go with the choice of, well, I'll take the painkillers, then I have a migraine, then I spend 15 hours in bed, miss everybody else having fun. And this is the reason I've got tattooed, and I obviously forget on my wrist, it's not all about you, because what happens is I then go into this mental health spiral of, I've ruined everyone's time, I'm a useless person, I'm shit, I shouldn't be here. You know, Mrs ADHD didn't sign up for this. I hate myself. The world would be better off without me. And therefore, the impact it has on my mental health is huge. But equally, in terms of my ADHD and my ability to try and refocus after a migraine, it's gone. So the triptans work and I can get up and I can do stuff, but trying to engage with tasks when I'm like that is really difficult. And the final thing is, this is such a bastard as well. I take lisdexamfetamine.
Yeah.
And unlike Mrs ADHD, who has paradoxical calming and therefore gets tired on a Lizdex, I can't fucking sleep on it. And to get rid of a migraine, I have to go to bed and sleep.
Regular time.
So if most of my migraines come on at about 4 a.m, but if I get one in the afternoon and take a triptan and try and sleep it off, I can't sleep. And then it's awful because you're just lying there, not able to sleep with this intense pain and nausea and vomiting and the room spinning. It's just awful. So there's a lot in there to kind of unpack, and it's probably boring for everyone that's listened, but that's why I liked it as a theme.
Really boring.
Right. Next question, last question, I don't know. Was there any thought or tip from the theme that you forgot to say, Cockface?
There was, yes.
Oh.
And it was that, I'm afraid it's psychoeducation, but ADHD, we all know, is linked to anxiety and depression and mood disorders. Sometimes the cause of them, sometimes just coincidence. Actually, more often coincidence than non-ADHD people. The problem is that another thing linked to anxiety and depression is migraine attacks. So if you're more likely to get ADHD when you've got those, and you're more likely to get migraine attacks, it could, in some people, look like your migraine attacks are linked to your ADHD, when actually there's a third variable that you've not noticed or not realised is linked.
I have to get the word variable in there.
It's a confounding variable, statistically speaking. That's what they call it. I like the expression of confounding variable. And so often it's thinking about if you get these migraines, but you're also prone to anxiety and depression that isn't helped with the ADHD treatment, it's likely that the anxiety and depression, this isn't medically true, it's individual, but it's likely that it's a separate comorbidity you've got rather than because of the ADHD. And therefore, treating that might help you more with the migraines. And by treating, I'm afraid, that fucking awful thing of meditation and therapy and the things that you need to support yourself with, or just, any level of self-awareness, James.
I don't know if it was deliberate or if it's an automatic kind of response. I didn't hear a single fucking word you said.
You need therapy.
Obviously.
And meditation. You need to meditate.
Oh, jeez. No.
Have we done ADHD meditation?
No, I'm not.
No.
I'm not. You two can do it. I'm not.
There's a good ADHD meditation. You don't have to be in a room going,
Shut up. Right.
Like noisy meditation. ADHD friendly.
Sam, is there any thoughts or tips?
I used to do chanting, which I liked. Hydrate yourself, people. When I was a Buddhist.
I think you already said that.
Yeah. But most people are fully hydrated.
Most Buddhists are.
Most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, you only need about 400 mils of water.
No, drink more than you ever think you need.
I know you've said this before, and I'm going to challenge this because we are all different. I have to have 4 litres of fluid a day. I have to, or I get a headache and my urine is dark brown.
Yeah, actually, you're absolutely right. And I should have said that. There are plenty of people who's have got different levels of the wee hormones.
Yeah, I'm sweating. I sweat like a beast.
He sweats like a beast of the field.
Beast of the field, sir.
No, you're right. I like to say it because it's true about the kidneys, but you're absolutely right. And you've got to check for your own individually. Yes, I was being slightly flippant.
Check your wee, guys.
Yeah. It shouldn't be clear, though. It should be yellow.
I know, straw-coloured. I'm not an imbecile.
Shall I ask myself?
Oh, yeah. What about you, James? Is there anything you forgot to say?
Yes, there are 2 things.
Okay.
Fuck me. The first one
I'm glad we asked.
Me too.
The first one is related to what I've told you about going away to people's houses or party events.
Oh, yeah.
If you get migraines, you need to try and remember, and we have on the form a packing list which you can download and use if you're ever going to go anywhere to make sure you pack everything. Prepare yourself. So if you're going somewhere and you have migraine medication, whether it's a triptan, whether it's a painkiller, the menthol cold strips that you can get are really, really good. Mrs ADHD even bought me a hat you can put in the fridge or the freezer, which you can put over your head.
And you look cool as well.
I do not look cool in it. Benny from
Crossroads.
From Crossroads, yeah, I did Birmingham a fucking 20 years disservice. So prepare, make sure you've got everything with you, because, and I can speak from experience, when you get somewhere and you know that a migraine is coming on, oh my God, not only is the migraine bad, but the fear. I remember once being at Aston University when one came on during the day, which wasn't very frequent. And I just thought, drop everything, got an Uber, threw up in the Uber because I couldn't get home quickly enough, and then had the charge associated with that. So just prepare and take stuff with you. And the last thing I want to ask, a vomit bag, yeah. I want to ask Alex, because he's often talks about this and I don't fully understand it, but ADHD is often associated with hyperflexible joints.
Yes.
It's also associated with migraine, and Alex has some information or an idea that there is something that links hyperflexible joints and migraines, possibly in people with ADHD. And what is that?
It's a really good question. I think we should do it as a podcast episode. So firstly, I'm pretty sure your top tip you didn't say last week was wear a cold Benny hat, but that's all I heard. And going back to collagen, not science tracks on yet. You know how knobheads in the media go, all ADHD is bad parenting or trauma, when actually there's probably a subsection of ADHD and will one day split up. It's very likely that at least a subsection of ADHD is because of either a genetic or a developmental problem with connective tissue, which is like the infrastructure of a building, like how the brain talks to each other with neurons. It has to be protected with scaffolding and doors and all things, and they're made of collagen, amongst other things. And if collagen's not quite right, it could rewire how everything talks to itself in the brain, as well as in your joints and in your fingers and so on. And there seems to be a slight link in some people with ADHD, but more than not, with collagen problems in ADHD. It started anecdotally, but it's getting more and more traction. And I think this is a real science. Watch this space bit of information.
So to make that understandable to people, so the ligaments that are found in joints contain a lot of collagen.
Yeah.
Therefore, if the collagen isn't made properly, it may those joints hyperflexible.
Yeah.
And migraine actually stems from blood flow issues. I think I'm right in saying that actually it's probably vasodilation that causes it, because CGRP is a vasoconstrictor. Is that right?
It's vasodilator, but it's also
it's
also linked to the release of pain hormones. So it's a difficult.
And collagen, again, supports tissues like blood vessels to make sure that they are able to do these things. It's possible that that's the reason.
It's strongly possible.
So how do you know if your collagen's shit, and how do you make it better?
Yeah, you can't.
No, you
Oh,
can't.
okay.
Because you'll have hyperflexible joints, I guess.
Yeah.
So I've got the opposite.
Someone very close to me. So a lot of people with serious hyperflexibility have to often in wheelchairs. You know, when somebody gets in a wheelchair and then you see them walking off, and then you go, "What? Why have you got to?"
Why would I do that? I'm not a monster.
I meant you, not what. I meant one. I don't mean me.
That's EDS. Other than Dan Loss, I've got the wrong name syndrome.
Yeah, but there's loads of things like that, and a lot of hyperflexible people have that where they can't get upstairs.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a genuine and very real disability, possibly. In fact, I would say probably connected to some ADHD.
Fun.
Well, that was our episode 75 of the ADHD Adults, and it was one of the Thursday extra editions of the ADHD Adult podcast. I think it was the 30th to 12th after the Monday's episode on ADHD and migraine, stroke, James's little headaches. If you like this nonsense, that's properly ableist language, and want to get involved, please do. We absolutely love it. It's really important to us. Contact us on the socials, Twitter, MySpace, and Ask Jeeves. Also on the Discord, the ADHD Adults. We will see you next time. Bye all.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, klaxon.